So if we do a bit of an appreciative inquiry around this, I'm just going to ask about what is, what works. What do you think of, like on our whiteboard over there, when you think of a learning community, what needs to be there for you? Think about the powerful ones that you've experienced. When I reflected back on the School of Leadership, there were these pieces and structures, but fundamentally what I loved about the experience was the bonding, the connection, the friendships that were formed, that we heard up here on the video, the memories that were built because we did things, and then now we had memories and stories that we were creating. We were creating our own culture, right? Think of the learning communities you've participated in or are participating in, and what are some of the things that you notice about them? What are the attributes they possess? I can't do all the work.
Presence, people with being present.
Diverse perspectives.
Trust. Trust.
Purpose.
Sharing. Ideas, diversity. Support.
A sense that we're all in this together.
And Bridget?
The phrase that comes to mind for me is all for one and one for all. So it does take in some of that support, and but it's that sense of there's someone that has your back, and we're all striving together for the same thing.
We've got Tracy from offline or online, and she's saying common goals.
Okay, I'll stop there, just because it's an illustrative exercise. And we've got some great things, and I think many of you would share some of these same ideas and concepts. And remembering back, the reason I chose this approach was remembering that my initial experience with learning communities was this loss. I had it, and then I lost it, I thought. And that's where this comes in, this process comes in so well, right? Because it's not lost, but you do need to go through the process of figuring out, well, what do you feel like you've lost? And I felt like I had lost that, because we weren't going to be meeting in the morning anymore. And I thought we'd lost some of this, because where's the opportunity and space to do that, okay? But you can see right away I'm jumping to and off of these things to what's actually, what I think is constraining me or making me feel like these things are lost, is that, well, it's not at 8:30, so therefore this is lost. We're not going to be meeting at a regular time, so this is maybe lost, and maybe some of that, and maybe some of the clarity around our common goals, and maybe even the sense of all for one, the fact that we're not meeting at 8:30 is going to cause all these things to disappear. But if we take the time to do this inquiry, we drill down to, actually it's about presence and support and trust, and there are so many ways we can create that. It doesn't have to be at 8:30 in the morning, or 9 or 10 or 3 or whatever. There are lots of ways to create these, so drilling down to those principles is critical, and was critical for me, because then I could work with my colleagues to generate other forms of community, right? How else could we achieve trust if we aren't going to have a regular, reliable time to meet in the mornings and start off our day? What's another way we can build trust? How do we do that?
I was thinking about the identity of that. I mean, having been a student here as well, it's part of your identity, I think. That's why it's the loss I felt initially. So maybe a commitment to stay connected to those principles.
And so you even drill down a little further to this idea that we build trust because we demonstrate commitment to each other. And part of that was at 8:30. We're all going to show up, right? So that demonstrated commitment. But there are other ways to demonstrate that, okay? So what are some other ways to show commitment?
To the principles, I guess incorporating them in your work, in your philosophy, in your other relationships external to Aurora. Thinking taking that learning and living it, I guess, outside of your institution and within another identity.
Great. So first figuring out what those things that you are committing to are, and then trying to think of creative ways to incorporate those into your daily practice so that it isn't always just in the morning, it can be at other times. Great. What's another way to demonstrate or build sharing into your day, your world? Because again, we were doing it at 8:30. We had a call to share at 8:30 in the morning, but now that's gone. What are some other ways? Yeah. You shared this morning a little tip for how to handle computer updates because it was wreaking havoc with our documents. And Tyler sent us out a little email and shared her solution. Right? So it's just that's built into our culture. We're all open to those emails. And so it's a great idea, but it also builds on a culture that we as a group had already built, right, about how we do things and we've all agreed to. And I got to say, in School of Communication and Culture, we don't want to meet all the time. A lot of people in the school don't love meetings. And so we have agreed that email is a way that we can communicate. And often the faculty are having conversations, discussions, problem-solving interactions online and through email. Simply as that. Eh? But we've all agreed to that. And we've arrived at that through meetings, I think. So looking for other channels to share. Okay, so just wanted to illustrate that I definitely had to go through this too. And every school should, and every program could, and every cohort could. And what a great process to try with your cohorts when they arrive. How do we want community to look for us? And School of Leadership had done that work. It was a long-standing program. They have some excellent practice and experience and knowledge. And they'd built this structure based on that participative collaborative model, deciding what their learning community would look like, and that worked for them. Okay? So we've translated a lot of these principles into our research methods courses in really interesting ways, and I think probably other programs have as well, but I just wanted to share some great stories around that. So for instance, Philip Vanini came up with the idea of a methodological neighborhood. Say that 3 times fast. So in our master's research course, the students are messy, around their proposals and their ideas and their topics, and gradually they find themselves, and he used the metaphor of the neighborhood, wandering down paths and discovering that they're sort of in a hood, and they're with all their peeps and all the other people who want to do semiotics, and they're starting to realize, yeah, we all want to live in the same condo building and share our ideas, and they really embrace the metaphor of the neighborhood. And some of them need to move, right? They discover, actually, I don't live in that condo building. I want to live out in the country with all the people doing visual or narrative or some other kind of method, right? But it's a metaphor. I love metaphors. And it also has helped them to then embrace the idea that this is actually a community that you're building around a method, but also around your research, and that there's benefit in being part of something like that you're not off alone on an island studying and learning your method. You're doing that collaboratively. So that's been a great tool. Another great tool that we've really, I would say, systematized is the mentorship. We know our alums want to come back. They always want to give back and help and participate. They never want to leave, some of them, right? And some don't. Look around the room. They're working here now. And so how do we incorporate those alumni and that rich energy and love for the place? Well, we systematized a mentorship program. So we simply ask who wants to be a mentor. They all put up their hands. Yes, yes. We collect their information and we simply share it with the incoming cohorts, not the incoming cohorts, the cohorts that are coming into their research, because they're freaking out and they feel like they don't have enough tools or strategies, and who can I talk to? And there are not enough faculty to go around, right? So they are looking for someone to connect with, and we can connect them with an alumni. And they can do some of the work, of course, and see what topics they're interested in and who looks like they could help them, where those people are located, what kind of interests or background or professional background they might have. And they link up, and suddenly now they are creating a community in that way too. We also try to bring our alums in to the classroom. So as we are welcoming the brand new recruits in that first res, we have those alums show up, because it often corresponds quite nicely, by the way, with our convocation. So these guys are coming back to graduate anyway, and they really miss Royal Roads, and we just ask them to come on into the classroom and share their actual research project. We're having an event this fall as well, our anniversary. We're 10 years old. Picture a little 10-year-old. I got a little 10-year-old boy. I keep having this metaphor this week. Yeah, just like him. And we're having this little birthday event, like a celebration, and we've invited our alumni to come in. And we've had 10 of them offer to do like a free presentation, right? So we're going to have this little conference, and they're presenting the things they've been doing, the research they've been working on, the projects they've been involved in. And it was hard to jam them all in there. We thought we might get 3 or 4, but we have 10. Wonderful. But those people will also come into our research class. I invite them in, and they share their research. They also, of course, then are able to share the multimodal nature of their research, because many of them have made something out of their research, or their actual research project was a video, or one girl made this beautiful Prezi that was actually a mosaic of her photographs that she'd taken. So they are able to demonstrate the many different ways that we do research here at Royal Roads as well, and the applications, right? So then they're broadening out that learning community right across the world, but they're also, again, inviting people into their community of learning.
And I want to share the story today of how I introduced sort of a first assignment in one of my courses to try to kind of expand on the opportunity to do some community building before the students actually come to campus for their first residency. So I was teaching the Introduction to Conflict Management Practice course. And usually I would have students write a first, short essay where they talk about their motivation for doing the program, and give me an opportunity to get to know them. But what is missing there is that they also get to know each other. And, I could have asked them to share the essays with each other, but, there's enough reading that they do. So together with Amanda Coolidge, I came up with the idea of using what's called the Mozilla Popcorn Maker to have students actually create a video clip and introduce themselves that way. So the technology is quite interesting and challenging, which has been one of the key feedback from the students. But in that actually is the beauty of the assignment. Basically, I gave them a task to create a 3 to 5 minute clip using the Popcorn Maker, which allows you to put together YouTube clips or other videos, your own footage, and also sort of add text to it. And the task they had was to introduce themselves to their fellow students and to the instructor, to demonstrate their understanding of conflict analysis and management. So basically, I wanted them to also incorporate some of the readings they had been doing in the pre-residency period, and to, in a way, self-assess their own readiness and motivation for studying in the program and why they wanted to do this particular program. So they had a couple of questions: the introduction and personal background, definition of conflict and what it means to them, an example of a conflict from their own context, either their personal or professional lives, and also cover their expectations. How students felt that these videos helped them to relate to different experience, to kind of lose the fear of, oh, am I good enough to be in this program, and everyone else has so much more experience. So it really became about, okay, these are some experiences that we share, these are some backgrounds that we share. They found they live in the same city and know the same people through these kind of things, even before coming to campus. And that then really showed when they came to campus. One of the students in the forum put it as, this is really where our journeys start to converge, where we come together and how we condensed our life path in these short video clips comes together, and coming to the castle makes quite a difference. So it was really quite amazing to see when we had our opening breakfast and in the castle that they really came up and introduced themselves by saying, "Oh, hi, you must be Corwin. You're the one with the little stick figures in the video. And hi, Nick, I loved your song." So right from the start, it wasn't this awkward feeling of like, oh, who are these people that I'm now going to be stuck with for 2 years? It was more like, oh, I already know you. I saw your video and you posted late and I almost didn't catch it, but I loved it. And thank you so much for helping me sort out my technological challenges as well. So right from the start, they had that sense of community that Jen was talking about earlier as well, that sort of sense of trust, the safe environment was right there from the get-go. And it really changed how we set off on the residency and the courses as well. Of course, this sounds all great, but I also want to share some of the challenges that came with the assignment, both from a student perspective, but then also trying to grade the videos, which were so diverse in that. And some students also just opted for videoing themselves and just spoke straight to the camera with equally empowering stories as well. So we did a session in one of my first classes simply to give the students the opportunity to voice some of the excitement that came with the assignment. There was quite an active online discussion, both for the technological challenges and talking about, pulling your hair out and this and that, because it isn't so easy to work through this. There's bits and pieces depending on your tech savviness, but also your computer setup and the videos you find. And so there was quite a lot of frustration going on, and there was a lot of relaying back on the computer help desk as well, which worked quite nicely on each other. So when the students started to voice that in class, there was actually a shift that was quite noticeable when they realized what they'd done and what they'd overcome and how they'd overcome that together. So at the end of the session, they all loved the assignment and said, don't change it at all. Whereas we started off by, never do this again. How can you do this to anybody? So it really did that. It broke down barriers. It allowed the class to bond. It fit in quite nicely with our topic of conflict management practice. As they reflected on, how much do I want to share of myself? How much of my private and personal stories, my background? How do I present myself to others? How do I introduce myself? How much of a presence do I share? Do I show my face or not? As you can see, both of these examples actually didn't show so much of their own face and who they were, but they shared a lot about their personal background. The student ended up loving the troubleshooting together, that there always was somebody saying, oh, I really don't know the answer, but I had the same problem and it really annoyed me. But I found a different way of doing it, and maybe that works for you as well. So they appreciated that sense of community as much as learning something about themselves. Because we can all write an essay, so you can kind of do that. But this really forced you to think outside the box. What do you use? What kind of materials? Going through your own pictures, your own music. Was it that you want to share? And one student put it in the sense of this really taught her that she needs to let go of perfection. Simply because even though you might have a clear idea and vision of what you want to do, you might not be able to translate that through the technology as well. So as I said, that really reduced the anxiety of day one. The students did have that sense of community, and it kind of put me in a weird spot because, on day one, you usually do all these introductory exercises and simple things and expectations, and it takes time, and it's more about helping the group to bond and build that level of trust. And they really came and went through all of the exercises in like 5 minutes, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I thought this was 32 students. I thought, this would take a lot of time, but because they had that sense of community, they really were like, okay, we don't need this trust building. We already have that. We're ready to go. We want to delve in deeper and, put some more of the theory that we've read into practice. Overcoming a challenge was the main key component in sort of the community building, both the challenge that students faced by themselves, but also as a group. This sort of common experience created a positive bond for them, which worked quite nicely into the transformative approach I was trying to teach in the conflict management program. So in a way, it also fit well into the course theme. I think the assignment can work in basically all other programs too, but in conflict management practice, it really worked well in helping the students sort of start engaging in reflective practice and thinking more about who they want to be as a conflict management practitioner and how they want their voice to be heard in that context. So in a way that the challenge really helped conflict and understanding conflict and how we interact and engage with conflict ourselves.
We take a look at an aspect of this university that isn't front of mind, food. That just happens to be one of the areas that I'm passionate about. And we try to transform the food. We're working to transform the food system here at Royal Roads. And so, similarly to Ava's approach, is presenting them with a problem that is very ambiguous. The challenge was to that if they achieved transformative change within the university, they would receive an A. That's what I said to them. And their immediate reply back to me was, what would be transformative? What does that mean? And I said, well, you tell me. And they said, well, is that salad, like, is that a local salad that ends up on the plate at Habitat? And I said, well, is that your definition of transformative? I mean, perhaps if it's a fantastic salad. But do you think that's enough? And so the first time around, by the end of the week, there was one individual who actually got up and stood on a chair and said, I can't take this. This is too crazy. This is too out there. I do not know where this is headed. I'm totally uncomfortable. And she had the courage to actually express that. And I was like going, oh my God, like what am I going to do? Like, this is a mutiny. Like, I can see it happening. And this isn't going well. And I had already told them that my rear was, my butt was on the line because I was trying something that was, different, and that if it didn't go well, that I probably wouldn't be invited back. So we talked, Jennifer brought up, this idea of purpose, about trust. And I think accidentally I was building trust. Basically, I'm saying, if you're in, I'm in. Really, that's what our class is about. It's about commitment. It's about leaping off without a perceived net. It's about becoming uncomfortable. But it's the part that I've learned since I've done this now 3 or 4. I'm going into my 4th time now. Is that they have to understand from me that I'm there to catch them, that I'm there to support them, and that the more I can do that, the more I can help them understand that and appreciate that, the deeper they go, the quicker they get there. So in the first time, I thought I'm going to just hold everything back, and then just sort of dole out the instructions and let them deal with the ambiguity and see them struggle. What I've learned is that that's probably not the most helpful. I want them to succeed. So what I do is I provide them views from the balcony. This is what I'm doing. This is probably what's coming up in you. This is what you're experiencing. It's natural. I'm feeling it too. Here's some approaches that we can take to deal with those challenges. One of the big parts of of this approach, this learning and teaching model, is the resourcing. I'm passionate about this. I think the other two speakers obviously are passionate about this. It takes a huge amount of resources. Every year I update my class. I cannot can my class. I cannot put it into a box and put it into a container that I can broadcast out. It won't be alive anymore. It has to be updated constantly. And I think this is, fundamentally, this is the one concern I have with the learning and teaching model, is in order to keep innovating, in order to keep responding, in order to keep things alive, it needs to be tended. And that kind of attention and support and creativity and passion requires resourcing, requires that kind of support. And that's the challenge. And that's not an easy, I don't think that's an easy challenge, but I think that's there lies the opportunity. How do we do this in a way that's effective?